Okay. We are going to be talking about, we're going to be finishing up drag and drop today. I want to start off with a little bit of housekeeping. If you were watching yesterday's, there was an issue where towards the very end, I had a problem transforming some data, my custom data model. And as soon as we got off the live stream, I figured out what was going on. So let me quickly show you what was happening here. So, oops. Let's go open up the iPad. Been seeing this error with the beta lately. Let's try it again. Okay, cool. So we have this. So this is the example of custom data passing, and we had the example where we could drag some data and it would bring the UI image over here. But when we dragged it to pass over to serialize a dog into data and then that data back into a dog up here, we're getting a crash. It now works with the custom metadata, and I can show you why. So so we were using NSKeyed archiver to archive it and unarchive the data. And what was happening was when we were unarchiving the data, we weren't conforming to NS coding, which of course you have to do, but it had slipped my mind. So made an extension on dog. Dog now conforms to NS coding. This is a sort of a simple NS object subclass. And it has the init with coder and encode with coder. Once you do that, you can both archive and unarchive your dog without any problems. So that was from yesterday. I'm going to get to today's stuff right now. And today's stuff is going to sort of be a recap as well as a lesson on how to do placeholders. And placeholders are pretty cool. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to start from scratch today. New project, drag and drop, placeholder. Okay. Okay, so we have just a plain old project, and what we want to do, the goal of what we want to be able to do is to have a table view that you can drop items on, and then while the data is transferring over, whether it be from the network, from another app, whatever, we are going to have a placeholder cell that shows instead of our real cell. And this is helpful for a couple of reasons. One, if the person cancels out of doing the data transfer or an error happens, or if you're adding other items to your table view, it's really hard to keep track of the index of what everything should be, where everything should be at. So Apple recognized this and it decided to give us this thing called placeholders. So to get started, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to add a table view. Well, actually, let's do our model first. And give me 1 second here. So basically, we're going to make a very simple photo app. Look at that thing. Okay, sorry. Let's try that again. Okay, that's a little better. Okay. And, oh yeah, photo error. All right, let's go through what we're what we're doing here. So we are going to have an NSObject subclass called photo, and it is only going to have one property. It's going to have an image. And I'll show you the reason we're doing this rather than just passing a UI image. Default initializer is just you pass in an image, you create it with an image, and we're going to extend photo to conform to NSItemProvider reading, which means that it can take an NSItem, we can create an NSItemProvider from data for these types of identifiers, so PNGs and JPEGs. And very simply, you have to fill out this variable here, and you have to conform to this method right here, object with item provider data type identifier. And we're going to say if the person's looking for a PNG, we are going to just simply create the image from the data and initialize the photo. But actually, yeah, so if it's a PNG or a JPEG, we're going to do the same thing. Any other type, we're going to throw a can't make photo error. The real reason we're doing this, and the more interesting part of it, is the NSItemProvider writing down here. And to conform to that, again, we need two things. We say we can offer this data, so we can transform an NSItemProvider into data, and we can do so if you request it as a PNG or a JPEG. And we're going to load data. And so if you're looking for, the simple case is if you're looking for a JPEG, we're just going to call the completion handler and pass you back data with no error, because that's what the closure is looking for. Optional data, optional error. So we're going to create data from our image, which is, self, because we have an image, and no error. We're not going to return progress because we're not dealing with that right now. That's an optional thing you can pass back. But if you're looking for a PNG, and this is the whole point of why we're doing it this way, we're going to dispatch async after. So we're going to wait, in this case, 2.5 seconds before we actually do it. And what this is going to simulate like a network call or a huge piece of data being passed from the drag source to the drop source. So we're just going to wait 2.5 seconds. Then we're going to create the PNG representation of our image as data, and then pass that into the completion handler. Okay. Next. Let's see. What should we do next? Okay, next, let's make something that's draggable. So this is going to be really, really super simple. We're going to, on our storyboard, we're going to create a single image. And we will constrain it, whatever. We'll just keep it, we're going to keep it very, very simple. Okay, and so the idea is that we're going to have an image up here that we can drag from, and then we'll have a table view down here which we can drag it into. We can drag it into it multiple times if we want. So let's go ahead and just grab an image that we're going to use. Let's go with a donkey. Hey. It was suggested to me that since my company is called Adam Smith Software, the donkey should perhaps be the mascot, but I don't know about that. Come on, dude. Let's go. The donkey is causing me problems. It might be a copyright protected donkey. Seriously. Let's try this guy. There we go. Donkey.png. Bring him in. Okay, now make an outlet, and we are going to create our image view. Let's go donkey image view. Okay. And we are going to statically set this thing up like so. We're going to say that there is let photo equal photo, and using our designated initializer, pass in the image, and we're going to pass in the donkey. Okay. Now, let's get rid of all this nonsense. When our view controller loads up, we are going to set the image view equals photo dot image. Okay, very, very straightforward. Nothing fancy going on here at all. Then we're going to add a drag interaction. Like we've done before. We're just going to do a little bit of this for review. UI drag interaction. We're not conforming to this yet, but we will in a second. And then donkey image view dot add interaction, drag interaction. Okay, and now there's actually a subtle bug here, but we're gonna get to it in a second. First, we're going to extend view controller, and we're going to conform to UI drag interaction delegate. And we are going to let it stub out everything we're missing. Okay, great. Now, as we discussed before, since photo conforms to NS item provider, reading and writing, actually just writing in this case, we can easily create our drag item. We can say let item provider equals NS item provider object, and so it conforms to, again, writing, which we know our photo conforms to writing because we just set that up. So we can say photo. Okay. Then we can say let drag item equal UI drag item. Again, that just takes an item provider, so we just pass that in. And then we have to return from this method an array of drag items. So we're going to say return drag item. Okay, that makes this warning go away because we're now conforming. And we are going to remember to switch to the iPad. And there is going to be a subtle bug here, which drove me a little bit nuts last night. But I want to show you guys. The stretchy donkey is not the subtle bug. The stretchy donkey is fixed by just making that aspect fit. Okay, so we have our donkey. We have set the image. We've added a drag interaction to the donkey. We're conforming to drag interaction delegate. But when we try to drag on it, long press and drag, nothing happens. And this was killing me last night. I tried so many things. And I remembered from the WWDC video that if you are using an image view as your drag, if you're adding a drag interaction to an image view, you need to set enabled is user interaction enabled equal to true, because by default it's not, and this needs to be true to drag stuff around. So let's double check that this works. Peel it off, and there we go. Now, this isn't perfect for a few reasons. You can see that there's the white box around it. We could fix that, but we're not going to really bother with that right now. I'm not too worried about it. But, okay, so this is the first half of the puzzle. Now, the second half of the puzzle is we want to be able to drag the donkey around and drop him one or more times into a table view and populate that table view with a bunch of donkeys. So let's get started with that. To do that, we are going to add a container view. That we are going to pin to the bottom of our view controller. And we're just going to get rid of this thing because we're going to actually add a table view controller. Control drag from the container view down to the table view controller and select embed. So we're going to have a embedded view controller relationship here. And then we're going to create a new subclass of table view controller. So UITableViewController, and we're going to call this the donkeys. I think that's the plural. Donkeys table view controller. Yeah. All right. Going to get rid of all this cruftiness. Yep. Okay. If you've been watching me, you know I'm relatively OCD about getting rid of unnecessary crap. Okay. Okay. So to start things off, I mean, this isn't going to be ideal architecture or anything, but we're going to start off with an array of photos. It'll be empty. Fonts photos equals photo. So we're going to initialize an empty array of photos. And then we'll just do the basic setup here. So we're going to say number of rows is photos.count. And we're not even going to do a custom cell right now. That's not the point of this lesson. We will get a reuse identifier though. Again, lots of not best practices here. This is just to show. So this is a donkey cell. Reuse identifier is donkey cell. Let's just, because all I want to show in here is the picture. So we'll just say cell.textLabel.text equals nothing. So we can basically hide it. And cell.imageView.image. Let's see. So we're going to get a reference to the photo at the index path. So let photo equal photos. Okay, sorry about that. My computer crashed, so let's see if we can get this going again. So where I was right before we crashed, looks like it didn't save a bunch of my stuff. Okay, whatever. Let's do it again. We're going to get rid of the crufties. We're going to reintroduce our photos array. We're going to say the number of rows is photos.count. Go to our storyboard. Reuse identifier is donkey cell. Donkey cell, okay. We're going to set our cell.textLabel.text equal to done. We're going to say, then we're going to get our photo. So we're going to say let photo equal photos. So index path.row. And we're going to set the cell's image view to our photos image view. So cell.imageView.image equals photo.image. Okay. This is all just standard table view stuff right here. Nothing fancy at all so far. Yeah, let's just make sure that we didn't break anything. Look at the iPad. Okay, we can still drag our donkey, have a table view with nothing in it. We can drop down here, but nothing's going to happen at this point. Okay, cool. So, making progress. Now, get my notes fired up again. Okay. Sorry about that. That threw me for a loop. Okay. Okay, yeah, we'll just do a little bit more here. We're going to say, we're going to make a private func to set up the table view. We'll say table view row height equals UITableAutomatic, and table view estimated row height equals 100. Okay. Configure table view. Okay, cool. We're back at it. So next thing we want to do is we want to enable someone to drop a donkey on our table view and then load that data up into the table view. So let's do that by adding a table view drop delegate. So we'll add an extension. Donkey table view controller. Now we're going to add UITableView drop delegate. So this is something we've covered before. We're just building back. We're building up again to using the placeholders, just because it never hurts to practice this stuff. Perform drop the coordinator. Okay, sweet. Now, the sort of standard way we're going to do this is we're going to say for drop item. So we're going to iterate through all the drop items in the coordinators items. Yep. UITableView drop items. And we're going to get the index path of where they're trying to index path equal coordinator destination. Oops. Destination index path, and that's optional. So if we get nil there again, we're just going to create one ourselves. And we'll just set it at 0, 0. Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking up one quick thing here. Okay. So we have our index path for each, and then we're going to get our data and then populate our model and then update our table view. So equal drop item dot drag item dot. Actually, we just need the item provider right now. So let's go with let item provider equal the drop item drag item dot item provider, and then we are going to say item provider dot load object of class, and we're looking to get a photo. So we're going to say photo All right, so now we've got our photo, and we're going to, so at this point, once this completion handler has been called, that means we've gotten the data over. And what we're going to do is we're going to say self.photos insert. We're going to insert, actually, we got to cast it first. let photo, that will guard, let photo equal photo as photo, plus return. Then we're going to add that to our data source array. At our index path.row. So we're just updating the data model. Yep, sorry. Instead of closure, so we have to call self explicitly. And then all we're going to do is we're going to update. We're going to tell the there's several ways to do this, but I think we'll try to do this the simplest way first. We'll say self.tableview dot insert rows. So we'll tell the table view to update at the array of index paths, which is right now just this index path. So we're going to upload it every time. Update it every time just to keep things simple. And we will do a fade. So this is not the most efficient way to do this, but this is a way to just kind of quickly illustrate. So we're going to iterate through all the drop items. We're going to get the index path of where the system thinks that the person was trying to drop it. We're going to get the item provider, which is the underlying data source from the drop items, drag item, item provider. And we are going to load the data that's in that item provider. We're then going to downcast it. We're going to insert the photo into our data source, and then we're going to tell the table view to insert rows to that index path. Okay, let's see if that works. Oh, I know it. It's definitely not going to work. Why is it not going to work? Because we never set the delegate. TableView dot, let's see, the drop delegate is self. So in our configure table view, we're going to set the drop delegate of the table view to be self because we're conforming now. Okay, let's see why that's not working. I'm going to do two things very quickly. Drag and drop placeholder. Let's open this guy back up. Okay, cool. All right. So one thing we can do, we'll implement a few more delegate methods just to clear things up a little bit. So we're going to say drop session did update. Yeah, and here we're going to return our UITableView drop proposal. And we're going to say we want to copy, and our intent is to insert at destination index path. So now we should be able to see the copy sign. Oh, I know what else we didn't do. Oh, here's what else we didn't do. We never jumped onto the main thread. I'm working on background thread here. So dispatch queue.main queue.async. So this stuff doesn't need to be in the completion handler. But this does. Because we're not on the main thread, and we're trying to update the UI, which is a no-no. And back on the darn iPhone. Oh, this is one of these stupid errors that can drive you insane. I'm pretty sure, yep, I never set the ViewController class. Donkeys. Donkey is appropriate. So I never set the class in the storyboard to be the donkey's table view controller. Whoops. Okay, see when we get that green plus sign? That means that we're trying to perform a copy, or that's what the drop proposal is suggesting. So let's see, we put it in. Okay, so for now, just for this next couple of minutes here, I'm going to get rid. The reason that delayed so long is because of this async block here. Okay, so we drag it down, we pull it in, and it works like normal. And then we can pull in multiple. If we want to go in between these two, because we've chosen insert at index path, there we go, trying to put it in as the first item. That would be the second, and that would be the third. So we'll drop it in as the second item right there, and we're good to go. Okay, so that was a little bit of a rough slog, but we are basically at a simple implementation of a UITableView drop delegate. Now, when things get a little bit more interesting is if we're going to assume that there's some network latency, or there's a large file size, or people are going to be adding multiple things to our table view, and we don't want to have to track this destination index path of what it's supposed to be and keep track of it, given all those different things that are happening at once. So Apple's solution for how they can help you with that, which is brand new in iOS 11 with this drag and drop stuff, is a placeholder. So let me start by, let's see. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, so the concept of a placeholder is it adds a placeholder cell for you in your table view controller that will essentially sit there and wait for the data to be downloaded, and then at which point we swap it out with the real cell. Or if there's an error, if it gets canceled, we just get rid of the placeholder cell. And it doesn't get any delegate callbacks. The data source doesn't know about it. So it literally just sits there like a dumb cell. And when we finally get the data, we swap it out. So we actually have to create a cell. It's just a normal table view cell. So we're going to add another one. And we're going to have to give it a separate identifier. We'll give this one placeholder cell. And we'll add a little activity indicator to it. Just do a big one. We'll pin it to the middle. And we're actually going to add a even though it's crazy simple, we're just going to add a subclass. Table view cell, placeholder, table view cell. And even though there's other ways we can do this, I want to actually add an outlet just so we can review something. Okay, so we're going to add an outlet to our activity indicator. Again, I forgot to set the class. So again, let's set our class, placeholder table view cell. Did I set the right one? Yeah, okay. Here we go. So, activity indicator. Okay. Very good. Let's clean that up. Okay, now, this placeholder cell will never get called over here in self-row and index path since the data source doesn't know about it and it doesn't get any delegate callbacks. So we're going to have to find another way to set it up. Okay, so we are going to backtrack a little bit here and start over. Okay, so it's going to be similar. So we're going to say for drop item in coordinator.items. Again, there's an array of UITableView drop items in the coordinator. We are going to get the index path of where we think, of where the system thinks the user is trying to drop the item into. Equal coordinator. Since that could be nil, again, we're going to say index path. If it is nil, we're just going to drop it in at the top. So 0, 0. So we've got our index path. Now we're going to create something called a table view drop placeholder. We'll take a look at that. This is where we're actually getting into new stuff finally. And that is comprised of a few things. So, sorry. It's an insertion index path, a reuse identifier, and a row height. So it wraps up those different things. So the insertion index path is just going to be the index path that we created above. The reuse identifier is the reuse identifier we created in the storyboard for this placeholder cell. And let's just make sure we get that right. Placeholder cell. And then again, in a real app, you would not just be using stringly typed things like this. You would make an enum or a struct or whatever. And then also the third thing is row height. And because we're using automatic UITableView automatic dimension, it means we can just do the same thing again here. Ooh, wait a second. Okay, I do have a small auto layout bug, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Okay, so we've created this thing called a UITableView drop placeholder. And one really good thing to know, which screwed me up, was in the WWDC 2017 video on this topic, which is fantastic, this API did not exist yet, and there was another one in place of it, and that one has been gotten rid of, and this one is what you need to use now. So that's something to look out for if you're just trying to copy the WWDC video. So let's keep going here. Now, the way we update our cell, so we call placeholder dot cell update handler, and basically you get a cell back. So let's look at this thing. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of information about it, but basically, if you want to update your cell, since you're not going to get any delegate callback methods, you pass in a closure here as to how you want to update your cell. And for us, we're just going to say, we're going to cast our cell. What do we call it? Placeholder, table view cell, plus return. And the reason we're doing that is we want to be able to make sure that the activity indicator is starting. Activity indicator dot, oh, does it begin? Why am I not getting the right method here? Dot. Let me just check. Start animating. Yeah. Activity indicator. Dot. Oh, it thinks it's a view. What? All right, let's go back and figure that out. Oh, weird. Okay, let's fix that. Why? That is strange. Okay, all right, let's do it again. Let's redo it. So we're going to drag out we're going to make an outlet for our activity view. Okay, yeah. Okay, now that it's properly cast, let's see, start animating. Yeah, so basically, if you want to do any kind of setup on your cell or anything custom, you pass it in this closure here. This takes the place of a delegate method. Okay, so continuing on. Now we're going to say, we're going to get a reference to our drag item. And we're going to get something called a placeholder context. And I'll explain that in a second. Okay, so we get a we get a placeholder context by calling on the coordinator, drop the drag item to placeholder. All right, and we're now going to get a reference to our item provider, which is the underlying data structure inside the drag item. And we are going to actually create a helper method down here, just so everything's not in the same method. Load photo from item provider. Okay. And here's what we're going to do here. We're going to say, again, we're going to use our kind of trusty item provider.load object of class. And again, we're still loading a photo. And we're going to get, actually this item provider. Yeah, so that's not really a photo right now. That's an item provider, but that's okay. And we're going to say, we're going to just guard against the error being nil. And we're going to make sure that photo is actually a photo. And then we're going to do some work on the UI. So we're going to have to, again, dispatch queue.main.async. And here's where we're going to use that context that we created before. So we pass back a context, and then we can swap out, using that context, the placeholder cell for the real cell. So placeholder context dot commit insertion. And here we'll have insertion index path. Okay, so at this point, the system is saying, okay, we've got your data, and we're going to commit, we're going to call the commit insertion method on placeholder context. And in the closure, we're going to get the insertion index path. And this is important to remember because this is where your data, this is where your cell should actually go. This thing might have taken 20 seconds. You might have had several other views and cells be taken out, be put in, be changed around. So your original destination index path up here might have completely changed. So it's important to remember that when you update your UI finally here, that we use this insertion index path that is handed to us right in this closure. So we're going to say now the only thing we have to do is we have to update our model, our data model. So we want to insert our photo, and we want to insert it at insertion index path dot row. And this commit insertion method actually takes care of telling the table view to update at the proper row. Now, an important thing to know is that while you're doing all this, while you're working with placeholders and placeholder context, you should never call table view reload data. And the reason for that is that it wipes out all of your placeholder and placeholder context, and you're just going to lose it all. So this method exchanges the placeholder cell for a cell with the final content. Here we're just going to call our helper method. We're going to say load photo from item provider and placeholder context. So let's see if this works, and we're going to go back, fix any problems that there might be, and then we'll talk through what's going on. Okay, so we saw that as soon as you drop it, we are simulating the fact that it's taking a while for the data to come by allowing dispatching async after for about 2.5 seconds. And then as soon as we actually get the data, we're swapping this cell out with the spinner. We're swapping it out for the donkey cell. So if we gonna try to quickly drop 2. We can both be going at the same time. If I was fast enough. Yeah. One thing that's kind of interesting is that if you bump this value up too high, you actually get this kind of weird system UI. Yeah, importing one item. So this, I have no idea why that shows. I mean, I know why it shows up because it's telling you that things are taking too long or a long time, and it allows you to cancel. But oh, what? Ew. But that's definitely nothing that I personally added. So let's see what happens if we cancel it. Cancel. Looks like it didn't do anything. All right, but okay. So you can see that that works. So obviously, this code here is just to simulate things taking a long time. This is not something you would want to do in practice. I mean, obviously. So let's just go through this one more time. And this was not the the smoothest lesson today, but it wasn't the worst one either. So we got our Donkey's Table View controller. When the view loads, we're going to configure it, with just the row height and the fact that this table view's drop delegate is self. So in our extension down here, we're conforming to UITableView drop delegate. We are saying we want a copy of the data, and the intent is that when the user is hovering over a place in our table view, we want to insert that data at that destination index path. We want it to drop in. We don't want to drop it into a folder or anything like that. So then when the user does perform the drop, and again, this is not fully using best practices. We're not double checking that, does the coordinator have a drop item that we're interested in? We're just assuming that it does right now. So there's definitely more steps you'd want to take in the real world, but we are iterating over all of the drop items that the coordinator has access to. That's because in our example, we only have one, right? Because we pull down the donkey, that's one drop item, and we're dropping it in. But in our drag delegate, we could have added multiple things there because we're passing in an array, or the user can sort of tap to flock things over while they're dragging, and they can drop down multiple things. So we're going to loop through every single drop item, which is a UITableView drop item. We're going to get the index path of where the system thinks the user's trying to drop it, and if it passes nil, we're going to just tell it, okay, put it at the top. We're going to create a placeholder, and for now, we're going to insert that placeholder where the user was trying to drop it, and it's going to pull the cell that we set up in the storyboard, and we're just going to give it whatever for a row height, whatever the system thinks. Then we're going to configure our cell by passing in a closure, because again, we don't get any delegate callback methods. So we're going to downcast to a placeholder table view cell which we created, and then just tell its activity indicator to start working. And this is, we could have done this other ways. This is just, I wanted to be able to show you folks how this thing gets used. Then we get the drag item property from the drop item. So what was trying to be dragged over. And we get our item provider, which is the underlying data of the drag item. And we get a placeholder context. And we get that by calling drop this drag item to the placeholder. So taking that item and dropping it to somewhere, And that's going to start that's going to kick off the adding the UI of that spinner cell and give us a reference to this placeholder context, which we can use later. So then we go down to our load photo helper method, and we're going to pass in the item provider, which is, again, that's how we access the data, and our table view drop placeholder context, which has the reference to that spinning cell. So we load the data from our item provider, and we want to get a instance of a photo. And again, our photo takes an extra couple seconds so we can see the spinner. We guard that there's no error and that the photo is actually a photo. And then back on the main queue, so we dispatch back to the main queue, we tell the placeholder context to insert the real data, the real cell, at the insertion index path. And we have to, our job then is then to update our data source with the data that we got back, that we got loaded, at the insertion index path that we got here. So, you know, it's very, very useful. It's not something that's crazy intuitive. It doesn't just like stick in your brain. You have to go back and do it a couple times. But that is how placeholders work. Okay, thanks everyone.